everyone's expecting to learn about SQL notebooks with Autonomous Data Warehouse. So what I'm going to walk you through today is this something called Oracle Machine Learning. It's an interactive SQL notebook that comes with Autonomous Data Warehouse. So it's built in, and it's a report querying system. If you're used to notebooks like Jupyter or Zeppelin, this is sort of like a supercharged version of those tools. So if you don't know me, my name is Keith Laker. I am part of the product management team for Autonomous Data Warehouse. I also look after Analytics SQL. There's my blog, my Twitter, my email address. If you've got any questions as we go through, I've got the chat window up, so hopefully I can see any questions that come up. If not, feel free to ping me however you want, or whichever mechanism works best for you. So I've already done one session earlier on Autonomous Data Warehouse Cloud. I think we covered a lot of the getting started, how to log in, how to set yourself up, how to load data, etc. What I want to do today is sort of quickly run through those in case you missed the previous session, and then talk about this new product that we have called Oracle Machine Learning, which is a SQL notebook tool. And then we'll look at running SQL statements, running scripts, creating interactive notebooks within Oracle Machine Learning, and then how to schedule notebooks to refresh. And then we'll just have a quick recap. Okay, so let's just quickly go back over the basics of Autonomous Data Warehouse. What is it? Essentially, what we're trying to provide you with is a data warehouse environment. It's fully managed by us, it's pre-configured, it's optimized for data warehouse workloads. The idea is you define the instance and you just use it. You just get on with it. You load your data and you run your queries. You don't have to worry about all the normal Oracle operations. What should I index? What should I not index? How should I partition my data? Don't worry about those things. We'll take care of all of that processing for you. All you need to do is just focus on where's my data. Let me get it into Autonomous Data Warehouse. We've optimized the technology so it's very, very fast. If you want more resources, if you want more CPUs, you want more storage, you can do that completely dynamically, scale up, scale down, turn it on, turn it off, depending on what you want to do. And you can do all of those with no downtime, unless of course you're stopping the service, at which point there is some downtime. So, assuming that you looked at my previous session on this, on the topic of OML, of Autonomous Data Warehouse, I'm now going to assume that you've got some data and you actually want to write some reports. How do you write reports? Obviously, you can connect your existing BI tools, but if you're completely new to Oracle, or you don't want to get involved in installing other software or signing up for other cloud services, you just want a quick and easy way to write some SQL and get some reports out, we provide this tool, this web service called Oracle Machine Learning, which is a SQL notebook. So again, it has some fairly straightforward objectives. A, we want to make it easy for you. So you've created your Autonomous Data Warehouse. It should take you, I don't know, 40, 50 seconds to deploy it. Very easy to get data in, as you'll have seen in the previous session. We want to create the same easy to use process for writing SQL. So we've provided this SQL notebook that's fully integrated into Autonomous Data Warehouse. You don't have to set up connections or anything like you do with SQL Developer. Connection's already built in, it's already configured. The setup and the configuration and the deployment happens as you do your Autonomous Data Warehouse instance. So as you create that, this whole SQL notebook infrastructure magically appears in the background for you. And then to help you, to explain to you, what you can do, how you can use the product, there's something called a gallery in there. And you can go in there and you can see some pre-built notebooks. Essentially, what you get access to is all of the 18C in database library of analytics. So Whatever SQL function feature you want, it'll be there, and you can run that SQL through OML. In addition, as I'll show you later on, you've got some Markdown tags. So there's a Markdown language that comes with OML. It's sort of like SQL, HTML. You can use some HTML tags, but it's also got its own Markdown, which allows you to sort of create dynamic visualizations, and I'll show you how to do that. And beyond most other SQL notebook tools, there's a collaboration capability here. So we built in the ability to build reports, share them with other users, and have some sort of versioning going on, so you know where you are with your report. So as I said, it's derived from the sort of open source SQL notebook tool, which most people refer to, which is Apache Zeppelin. And what we're trying to do is, as I said before, is give you SQL, a very quick and easy way to have SQL access into ADW without the need to download or deploy any other tools. It's got data visualizations built in, so you've got tables, you've got graphs, and so on. As I said, you've got additional features above and beyond most of the SQL notebooks. So we've got things like sharing and collaboration framework, which aren't part of, for example, Zeppelin. All of the work that you do within OML is pushed back inside the database. So there's no need to back anything up. It's all autonomously backed up by Autonomous Data Warehouse. So you've got sort of security there in terms of having all of your notebooks, your SQL statements, your scripts all backed up inside ADW. So it's all taken care of for you. So as I said, you have this Autonomous Data Warehouse on the left. You've pushed your data into it, and then on the right here you can see you've got a machine learning SQL notebook tool. And I say what you get access to is the huge SQL library of functions. So machine learning, statistics, time series analysis, pattern matching, forecasting, modeling, approximate queries, analytic views. If you want to add the analytic view metadata, analytic views that we added in 12.2, which give you a sort of a multi-dimensional data model and multi-dimensional metadata that you can share with other BI tools. All of that capability is part of ADW, but you also get this Markdown language. What that allows you to do is create pull downs, forms, checkboxes that allow you to control how your SQL is executed. So you could have, for example, a dynamic where clause, or change the aggregation method. And I'll show you some examples of those later on. As before, when we looked at the introduction to Autonomous Data Warehouse, you'll realize that we have something called resource groups. And the resource groups that we give there are three levels. There's high, medium, and low. And these are accessible from within OML. So with OML, you can choose for each query group within each worksheet which resource group you want to allocate your query to, whether you want to run it in high, medium, or low. And all these effectively do is give you access to more and more resources, whether it's more parallel resources, more memory, and so on. So obviously, if you run a query in low and you run a query in high, you would expect the high, depending on the type of query, to run faster because it has access to more resources. So how should you think about using a SQL notebook, given that there's lots of features here? And typically, the way that most people we expect to use this will be that you'll start with your SQL statement or SQL script, and you'll use the in-database analytics. What you can then do is, if you like, enhance that SQL statement or SQL script by documenting and annotating it by using the Markdown tags. So, you can have a report, you can have a pie chart, and then you could have another script area that would provide you with space to explain what that pie chart is doing. So you can effectively annotate your reports. You might also add some interactive capabilities by allowing the user to update or change that pie chart. Maybe you allow them to select a different product category or a different time frame, and you can prompt them and allow them to get access to those prompts and then dynamically update the report so they can change the information that's seen in the pie chart. And then there's the capability to collaborate and share. So we can version notebooks. If we've got a team that's working on producing a series of reports, you can collaborate, you can version the notebooks, you can share the notebooks then with report consumers, and if you want to, you can export your workbooks, your worksheets, your SQL statements, scripts. You can export those out to JSON files and then move them to another autonomous data warehouse. So before we go any further, and we'll explain some of the key concepts, let's see if we can get in. We'll see if this doesn't seem to be working either. Not exactly having a good day today with technology, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm just going to sign in to our cloud environment. Okay, so when you sign in, it's going to be a quick recap for those of you that were on my first session on about Autonomous Data Warehouse. You'll come into this sort of dashboard landing page. And if you're completely new, the first thing you're going to do is create an instance. So what I've done is update my dashboard, and I've added, as you can see, I've already been using Autonomous Data Integration. I've got a database service. I've been working with Autonomous Mobile. And I've got Autonomous Database up and running as well. So what I'm going to do is go into my Autonomous Database console, and it's going to take me into our cloud infrastructure. I'm going to pop the menu, and you'll see Autonomous Data Warehouse here. If you were paying attention last week, you'll remember Larry announced Autonomous Transaction Processing. It's already here, so you can try that today as well. I shall go and pick up my Autonomous Data Warehouse. And you can see I've already got, excuse me, I've got an instance created. You can see it's already backing up very nicely for me. There's nothing I'm having to do to get it to do that. It's just ticking away in the background. The last full backup that it did, well, incremental backup, was on Wednesday. I haven't used it since Wednesday, 1st of August, but my system's up and running. It's available. I'm going to open my service console just so as we can come in here, go to administration, and first thing you're going to do is probably set yourself up with some users. So you'll have your admin account from when you created your ADW. You can see here, System Administrator. And I've already created a couple of users ahead of time. If you want to create a new one, you can just create a user, give them a username. We like a first name and last name, password. This is where it gets a little tricky because you have to come up with, oh, where's it gone? Web script. Now you have to come up with quite complicated passwords. So I am just actually put that in there. I'll put the email address in. So what happens now is when I email this to myself, I will get a welcome to OML message for this particular environment and the connection details to log in. So I'll say create. Okay, yeah, let's save that one. So there's my new user, and I'll get an email to my email address telling me I can sign in. Now in this case, I'm actually going to sign into my GKL account. So I click on the home button. Okay, so I need to go there. I've got a feeling because I was upstairs, the system was playing around and it forced me to change my password. And now I'm back to where I was earlier on before my laptop crashed. Fantastic. Okay, so here we are. We're now logged into Oracle Machine Learning. And let's just try and get a bit more space. Well, okay, that'll do. So what I've got here is I'm into Oracle Machine Learning. I have a little pull-out menu on the side here, which will move me around OML. I have something called a workspace and projects, and we'll come to that in a minute. This is my user account. I can look at my preferences, change the password. And then here I have a series of quick actions. And you can see here there's sort of a history of what I've been up to. So I've imported some notebooks. I've done some work in a SQL script, so on and so forth. Now I said when I came in, we actually provide you with some examples. So if you're thinking, what do I do with this? How does it work? Well, we've put some initial workbooks in here. So if you wanted to understand, okay, let me look at my first notebook. I can open up that notebook and look inside it and see how it's put together. So you can see here, it's unusual in that, I've got textual information in here, I've got images, I've got links to other documents, and then I've got a table. So we see here, SQL statement, select star from all tables. Here's all the tables that are owned by that user. I have another table down here. I've got various graph types. So I could do a pie chart or an area chart or a line chart, scatter plot. There's various types of graphs that you can play with. And then with the graph, you can then change the axes depending on your requirements in terms of building it. Okay, so let's go back up to our home page. You can access the recent notebooks, and of course we've got some learning resources up here that will allow you to, okay, how do I create a notebook? So if I click on that, that will take you to our documentation where we'll link you through. Okay, so that's a very, very quick run through the top part of this. I'm going to go through some of these in a minute in the presentation and the notebooks and some more information about jobs. So let's quickly go back in here. So let's have a look at some key concepts. So the first thing we have is this concept of a workspace. And within a workspace, you have the concept of projects. And within the workspace, you control access to projects. So I can have multiple projects within a workspace. As you can see here, I've got a demo workspace. I have something called customer analytics, which is my in-database data mining. I've got my project demo, and I've got sales analytics, where I've done some analysis based on the SH schema. Within each project, I then use that for organizing my scripts, my jobs, my notebooks that I've stored. And a notebook, that's where we do our work. So it might be a script, so I can run a SQL script, or I can run a SQL statement and have that as a table, a graph, those types of visualizations. Each notebook can contain one or more paragraphs, and a paragraph is where we either run a script, some markdown language, or a SQL statement, or a combination of the two. So a SQL statement with some markdown language, or a script with some markdown language. And you can have multiple of these within each notebook. Now, each notebook, as I said, we have, if you remember the slide a while ago, we have this concept of high, medium, and low connectors. So you see here, we have this concept in OML of something called a binding. And this comes from the generic SQL notebook type terminology. And a binding is the connection that I want to use, or the features that I want to use within this particular notebook. So you can see here, I've actually, when I'm going to work in this particular notebook, which is my SQL script scratchpad, I am going to connect to my low connection against my ADW, which is called ADW Finance. And while I'm doing that, I also want access to my Markdown script. So I'll be writing queries, writing scripts, and including some Markdown language. So that's pretty much the only setting that you need to sort of play with or experiment with or set to make sure that when you run your queries, you're running in the right resource group. Ooh, let's go back. Next thing is a paragraph. So this is either a single SQL statement or a single script, both of which can contain markdown tags. And with a single SQL statement, you get the added advantage of this toolbar popping up. So with a script, you have control over the output. Typically, it's just going to be rows and columns, as if you were in SQL+. If you do a SQL statement, a single SQL statement, a single select statement, you're going to get access to some data visualization tools that will allow you to enhance how that information is displayed. So as I say, the first thing you do when you come in, you're going to arrive on this page. Now, this little hamburger menu on the left is your pop-out menu. So wherever you are in your notebook, whether you're running a script or you're doing jobs or you're looking at examples, if you want to come back to this page, you just click on the hamburger menu, click home. We've got resources over here, so that will get you either directly into a quick link or out to our learning resources how-to guides. The shortcuts are here. These are the typical things that you will want to do. Obviously, if you click on the menu here, you'll see a lot more things, a lot more tasks that you can do. These are just the most common ones that we've added on here. And of course, you get a history of all the things that you were or have done. So for example, the last thing that I was working on yesterday was my SQL query scratchpad. Okay, so if we went into a SQL query scratchpad, what would it look like? It would look something like this. So I'd come in, I'd have a title at the top here, which in this case has been preset because I clicked on a shortcut link. So it's named my report SQL Query Scratchpad. I can change that if I want to. And I get this thing here, which is this sort of block. And you'll see this with a little menu here. This is my paragraph. So this is where I write my SQL statement. Now for a SQL query, each paragraph, each block like this can only contain one query. And if I can either show the editor area, this is called the editing area, and I can either show or hide that, depending on the amount of information that I want to share with my users. When I run, if I hit this little triangle and run it, that information there will then produce, for example, a pie chart, and that's called the output area. And again, the output area I can show or hide, depending on how it is that I want to present that information. The combination of those two, the editor area and the output area, equates to a paragraph. Hopefully that makes sense. The whole thing, this SQL Query Scratchpad, my editor area, my output area, which make up my paragraph, make up a notebook. And my notebook in this case is called SQL Query Scratchpad. Now, each notebook itself has, excuse me, its own menu area. And that will allow you to, if you have, for example, more than one query, rather than individually refreshing each query by going to each paragraph and clicking the triangle, you can run all of your paragraphs within that notebook. So if you have multiple pie charts and you want them all to refresh, you can do that. If you want to show or hide all of the code, you can do that. You can clear your notebook. You can export your notebook as well. So you can export it to a file. You can change the bindings, which is here. And you can change the default report type for when you run a query. And the default is to give you tabular output. So resource interpreters. So just to quickly go back over this. We do have three. If you can go back to my Introduction to Autonomous Data Warehouse step-by-step guide, you'll get more information about these resource groups. But you'll see when you click on in the main menu for your notebook, the binding, interpreter binding, the fact that you've got three connections to whatever your instance is called. So mine's called ADW Finance, and I've got low, and I've got medium, and I've got high. And this just determines how many parallel resources you get for executing your query. Obviously, high gives you the most resources and would be expected to run the query faster than, for example, medium or low. Typically, when you define your SQL Scratchpad, whether it's script or SQL statement, you probably only need two interpreters. So in this case, I've decided my queries are fine running in the low group. I'm happy for them to run. They run fast enough, but I also want to be able to make them dynamic. So I've got some Markdown language that I've used. So I just select the low group and the Markdown tag. Now it could be that maybe for some users, the reports are not running fast enough. All I need to do is come back into my report and change maybe to the medium group or the high group, deselect that, select one of these two, save the notebook, and that's it. The connections will automatically pick up the fact that we've changed and will allocate themselves to the correct resource group, whether that's high or medium. So it's very, very flexible. And within your project, obviously, each notebook could be using a different resource group. So some of your notebooks might be using low, some might be using medium, some might be using high. It's entirely up to you, but you have that flexibility. It's not a global setting, it's a setting for each notebook. As I say, this sort of goes into a bit more detail about if you had this particular configuration. Now, these are the resources that you're typically going to get access to. As I say, it's just really about giving you more resources to run queries faster. So in high and medium, we'll run queries using parallel execution capabilities. Obviously, as you move queries up between low, medium, and high, the number of queries that we can run concurrently decreases. So we can obviously, with low resource requirements from queries coming in, we can run lots and lots of concurrent queries. If you have lots of users that all want to run all of their queries in high, then we can effectively service fewer concurrent queries. All that means is queries are going to back up, we'll put them into a queue, and as resources become available, we'll pull them off the queue. Okay, running SQL statements. So as I said, you get this thing called a paragraph, which allows you to create a query, execute a query, and then change the visualization. So what can you do apart from write SQL statements? So you can write SQL as you'd expect. You know, in any SQL notebook tool, you can write SQL. What we've provided is access to some markdown tags, which gives you the capability to, in effect, document what you've got. So you can access those. You know, there's a predefined set of dynamic content generation markdown tags, and I put a link in here that you can get access to. You can add things such as, for example, links. And you did do this in a specific way. So if I wanted to create a link, I might say, click here for more information, to tell the markdown tag that that's going to be followed by a URL, and the URL should encompass click here for more information. I wrap the text in square brackets, and then I immediately follow that with an open bracket, and then I give it a URL and I close the bracket. And I write it that way. So in the MD area, in my MD paragraph, my markdown tag paragraph, that's precisely how that would appear. Except obviously here we'd have a URL pointing somewhere. When I then run that markdown, I will just see click here for more information, and this would then come through as a hyperlink to that URL. Now I can set up multiple links, so I can make the, if you like, the information a little easier to read for the next person coming along. Documentation set, if somebody has to update it. I can also do references, so I can make reference links. So I might say link to first URL. Again, I use the square brackets to do that, and then I give it a square bracket of 1. And then I might say there's another URL like this. Again, I put this is the word that I want linked, and I'm going to link it to the second URL. And I want some hover text on that one as well. And then below that, I put a marker, which is square bracket 1. give it a link, and I can do square bracket 2, give it a link, and then give it hover text message by putting this in quotes. So what I would see is the word this would come up as a hyperlink when I execute this paragraph. I'd have the link to URL link-2, and as I hover over it, it would say my hover over text message. You can also do, in the similar way, you can add in images. So again, in this case, we use the square bracket, but we prefix it with an exclamation mark. And then in the round brackets, we add the image URL. Now you can use HTML coding as well. So you can use, things like H1, strong, EM, however you want to do it. But there's also standard codes like star will make it italic, star for bold, triple star will be bold and italic. So what does that all look like? Okay, so what I've done is I have provided, and I can provide to you, a series of pre-built notebooks. And those will be included as a link in this presentation. What we do is I've created something called a heading here. It's a paragraph. So I've said overview, click show output to view. So in this case, what I've done, and I'll show you this in a minute, is actually hide this information. So I've prompted the user, okay, click show output, which will be over here, to view the information. And then I've got %MD, which tells me, okay, for this paragraph, I am now about to start using Markdown bindings. So I'm not going to be writing SQL. I'm not going to give you a SQL script. I'm going to give you Markdown code. And then I put my text. Okay, so the purpose of this report, blah, 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 text. You can see here, I've got live SQL as a link to livesql.oracle.com. I've got text here, which is going to be a link for Analytics SQL to my OTM page. And so on. I've put an HTML tag here. I've got next top 5 reports and some basic textual information. And then I've linked in a video to the information here, which is going to take me out to YouTube. And then I've got some additional textual information. So I've got image tags, I've got URL links, I've got reference links here, etc. So this is what, if you like, the documentation would look like. The output would look like this. So I might have my top 5 selling subcategories here, and then I could have on here, as you can see, now I've run that paragraph, i.e. I've hit that triangle there. That's now executed this Markdown language, and you can see here, that's the output. And I've also hidden the Markdown text, so you don't see that anymore. What you see is this beautifully formatted watch a video by Tom Kite on easy top-end pagination queries using the limiting clause, which is what we've used on this SQL statement. So you've got a very, very rich, clever way of being able to create reports and to make them usable in terms of people being able to understand what it is that you've written, what it is that data that you're presenting them with. Okay, so what you have, let me come out of here. Let me go back into here and SQL query scratchpad, hoping this one works. Okay, so there's my select star from SH, first 5 rows only. I could create, well, I'm not going to be able to create much of a graph out of this, but you can see here I can then say, okay, hide the editor. So now all that I see is the output. And that's typically what you get from most query tools, the ability to just show the output. What's nice about this is that, you know, we can in effect create something that has some documentation to it. And if I go back, let's go back up to here. Let's go to my notebooks and let's change to, I shall select a project. So let's go in here and let's pull up schema overview. So if you wanted to know about the sales history schema, here we have some documentation that explains, okay, here's the overview of the sales history schema. And if I show the editor, you can see here, here's the information relating to that. And that then generates that. So you can see I've got HTML listings, bullet points, I've got headings. In here, I've just pulled up the diagram for that. So it's a really nice way to document a set of queries. Okay, so let's go to products. As I said, you can have multiple queries, multiple reports within a paragraph, within a notebook. So I've got multiple paragraphs. So remember I said, click here to show output. I can do show output, and this will give me, here's some information about what this sales dashboard for products is actually about, what it is that we're trying to provide, how you use it, what types of reports I've got, what the purpose of those reports are. And then if I finish with that, I can just say hide output. Now I can see all my data. Now what you'll notice here is that, you know, I've got this year versus last year, but I can't interact with this. I can see the information, but there's no way to interact. What if I wanted to look at 2 years ago or 5 years ago? Or what if I wanted to change the piece of information I was looking at? Maybe I wanted to focus in on a particular country. In most BI tools, you get that ability to swap either dimension values or swap dimensions out or change the aggregation. How can you do that? Well, we have a really powerful markdown language that allows us to do that. So you can use the HTML markdown tags in a way to document, but you can also use them to control column selection or set the aggregation method or completely change the query that you're running, maybe the where clause or the group by or the order by clause. In effect, the only thing you need to be aware of is the markdown is parsed before the SQL is executed. So this is how the markdown is able to do things like column selection. So you can have a select statement where you use markdown to determine or let the user determine the columns that are going to be displayed in the report, or what the aggregation method is, whether it's sum or average or min or max, or what the where clause is, and whether the time periods, this year, last year, 5 years ago, so on and so forth. It's very, very simple. There's a various ways that you can do it. You can have things like checkboxes, you can have forms, you can have pull downs. There's a whole series of sort of dynamic selection processes that you can build, and they're fairly easy to understand. So for example, here I've got a select calculation type, and I've got average here, and I've got columns. So I can see all channels, channel class, channel ID. I can do year, quarter, month. I can do it by country, region, sub-region, countries. If you're used to the common schema, the sales history schema, those are elements that you'll be aware of. So how do we do that? So from here, I can say, okay, here's a checkbox. I want the columns of channel total. And if I say channel total, that's my default. So when I come in, I want channel total. Channel total is all channels. Click there. Channel class is going to be channel class. That's the column identifier in my table. That's how I want it presented to my user. So sometimes where we're picking columns, channel underscore desk is not particularly user-friendly, but if I just say channel, that's more helpful. Similar, calendar quarter desk. Most users probably would find that a little complicated, so I'm going to translate that just into the word quarter. And then because I'm changing the columns, I can feed that same information into my group by and order by to completely change the report that I'm running. And in a similar way, I can change the calculations. So I've added another here. So whereas before I was using the dollar checkbox with curly brackets to define some dynamic capabilities, I'm using dollar select to create a pull down. So let me go back over here. So here you see it. If I change my report, so let's just quickly show the editor. So here you can see I've got a where clause where time ID equals time ID, product ID is product ID, but where the calendar year, and then here I've got my dynamic capabilities. So I've said where calendar year equals, and then dollar select, calendar year default is 2000, as you can see, and then I've got values that I'm going to pass in. And the bit in quotes is the value I'm going to pass back. 1998 is what I'm going to display to my user. So I can do 1998. Oh, first thing I need to do is, I shall go with low. Let's try that again. That's off. So I can change that to 2000, 2001. Now I can dynamically step through this report. And I can change the product category as well. So I can change it to hardware. Photo. So you can see here, my second where clause, I've got product category desk equals, and then I've got select, product category, default is electronics, hardware, software, etc. So I can change. So now I've got a completely dynamic report that allows me to see what's going on. So that's how you can take that out. That's how you can use the Markdown language with a combination of SQL. So here's my paragraph. It's running a SQL statement that includes Markdown tags as well. Okay, so you might then also use some of this information to document your reports. So I will upload, I'll send this to Francisco to the presentation to make it available. So you can download this whole series of notebooks. Well, actually, there's two series because I've got two groups. So let me select a project. I've got two groups of workspaces that I've built. There's a set of customer analytics, which are all data mining, machine learning, and there's some sales analysis ones that will give you access to things like products dashboard. There's a customer dashboard. And essentially what I'm doing here is trying to show you some of the new SQL analytics features. Oop. Right, let me just get rid of that. And different data visualization types, how to use the Markdown capabilities, the Markdown tags to do different things. So that's my customer one. And then I have the channels one, which is a little more complex again, has a different set. Again, using Markdown language to do that. And let's go back to notebooks. There's a completely ad hoc notebook here, which again has a different set of capabilities built into it. So again, giving you some different insights as to how to use these different features. And we'll make those available too, so you can just download them and effectively reuse the code that we've put in. Now you'll notice that when I go into my notebooks, the notebooks that we just quickly looked at, I went to use one and it said, oh, there's no binding, and it gave an error. So the question would be, why is there data showing if there's no binding? How can that be? When you execute your notebook or execute a paragraph within your notebook, the notebook's automatically saved and the data within that visualization is saved as well. And it's obviously saved at that point in time. So if I'm doing open that notebook, look at the data, and then for each one, either hit the refresh whole notebook or refresh each individual paragraph to make sure that the new data for August was automatically incorporated into their reports. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. You don't want users to go into your notebook and see stale data. But similarly, it is very useful to be able to just open up a notebook and see the data that's there without having to wait for a query to execute every single time. So what you can do is we have this jobs tag, which allows you to schedule when your queries will get, or when your notebooks will get refreshed. And it's a very, very simple interface. You just give the job a title, you give it a start date, however many times you want it to run, the frequency, number of runs, how many failures that you're prepared to tolerate. Maybe the data load is overrunning or something, and the data's not quite ready yet. It may error, the query may error. So you might want to say retry a couple of times. And then you select, so in this case, I'm going to do my sales analysis over time. In my project sales workspace, I'm going to run this particular notebook, and it's a repeat frequency of 1. You can also do a timeout. So if the query's running and running and running, you can say, okay, well, maybe there's some refresh going on as well. Maybe somebody's changing the data set. Let me do a timeout. I'll wait 60 minutes. If the query doesn't complete in that, then just stop it. And depending on what you set, either the maximum number of runs or the number of failures, You might sit there and wait, and then it'll try again later. You'll get a status report for each refresh as it tries to run it, and it will say, okay, yep, successfully run 9:27, 9:30, 9:31, 9:32. For some reason we got an error. What would the error be? I could click on the view and it might say, okay, table or view does not exist. So maybe at that point, now maybe my DBA was clearing out the table and was loading out a new data set. So in that case, either I go back to the team that's loading data, or I could just say, okay, try again in 60 minutes and see if the refresh will happen then. So there we go. I think we're just about on time. Oracle Machine Learning SQL Notebook comes with Autonomous Data Warehouse Cloud. I'd recommend looking at the previous session that I did, the step-by-step guide to Autonomous Data Warehouse, that will get you to a point where you've got data in, you've created a new instance, you've got data in, and you're ready to start writing queries, and then you can start working with OML. The very, very easy to use SQL Notebook. There's nothing to download. It's all integrated into Autonomous Data Warehouse. There's nothing to set up. All the configuration and everything is built in. It's just ready to go straight out the box. To help you get started, we have a sample gallery of notebooks, a library that you can go into, but I'll also make available the notebooks that I've pre-built around the SH schema that show you, the flexibility of how you can get access to the 18C in database analytics, and how you can use the Markdown tags to create really nice, powerful visual dynamic reports. There's collaboration and sharing built in, so if you want to work with lots of people in a team, it will support that and help you. So there's a lot of places that you can go to get more information. We have a huge hands-on lab that you can work through that also includes OML and also includes information about using OML with data mining, machine learning, AI capabilities that are built into the database. We have a dedicated Q&A forum on Cloud Customer Connect. So if you've got any questions about OML or questions about ADW, I'm usually on that forum monitoring what's going on. I'll get email alerts if you post questions, so feel free to use that. And if you're thinking about, as a DBA maybe, what does all this autonomous stuff mean for me? Please check out our Forbes article on that. As a DBA, things like OML, ADW, we want to make you more valuable, a lot more valuable to your company, allowing you to work with the data sets and just use your skills and knowledge to extract as help your users, people who are maybe using OML, to get as much value out of the products, out of the data as possible. And that's Forbes article is a great insight into that whole process. That is it. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions, give me an email, Twitter, blogs, etc. Ping me on one of those or on our cloud forum. Have a great day. Thank you very much.